Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. We have a very fun video today, a really cool box of dinosaurs I just purchased. I did pay a little more than I probably would have liked for the box because I usually try to get stuff kind of cheap. This time I paid about 50 bucks for everything. However, the stuff that is included in this box is just really cool stuff, and there's one figure specifically that I was really aching to get for a very long time, and although it does have some damage, the figure is so rare, I don't even mind that fact. I'm just happy to actually have one in my collection. But the very first figure that I'm going to bring in here actually is a figure that I have no idea what it is. It's got a little dust on it, but it's some sort of a vintage kind of a plastic model kit of a Triceratops. I'm usually kind of familiar with most of the older plastic model kits. This one I don't really know. It kind of looks like maybe like a similar version to like the Pyro or the Lindbergh Triceratops, but I really am unsure as to what it is exactly. It does have a little damage here on the tail. The tail's broken off, as is the horn right here. But for the most part, it's in decent shape. If we turn it around here, it's not in terrible condition. But I really don't know much about this one. So if you guys happen to have a lead as to what this figure is, as to who makes it, that would definitely be much appreciated because I am not sure. Now this one I am quite certain is the Lindbergh or Pyro, Apatosaurus aka Brontosaurus figure. I'm definitely thinking that's what this one is. I actually don't have that figure, but I'm pretty sure that's what this one is. I have seen quite a few images of it in the past, and pretty certain that's what that guy is. And then there were also actually some Invictas included in here, one of which is potentially the most iconic Tyrannosaurus Rex figure ever, which would be the Invicta Tyrannosaurus. I do have quite a few of these already, but the figure is so absolutely gorgeous. I'll take a million of them and never complain. So I am happy to have yet another Invicta Tyrannosaurus to add to my collection. Such a beautiful figure. And there are some really random figures in this box, like bootlegs and all kinds of stuff. And even like some newer stuff that I really did not expect to find on like a random eBay lot. But lo and behold, they are there included, and one figure, which is not really all that random, and is also an Invicta figure, but it's one of the nicest Invictas that I think that there ever has been, is the Diplodocus. And shockingly, with the amount of figures that were stuffed in this box, and they were not very well shipped at all, which is why some of these figures, the plastic ones, seem to have damage, the tail survived. And if you are familiar with the Invicta Diplodocus, you'll probably know just how brittle and fragile the tails of this figure are, and I'm really impressed with the fact that this tail survived transit. I honestly expected to have to re-glue it together and everything, but shockingly, it made it okay, and the figure is in pretty decent shape overall. Another incredibly awesome and beautiful Invicta figure. Then we have a completely random Triceratops included in here. This one I don't know anything about, however, I can definitely say that it has a very cheap feel to it. It feels like it's probably hollow. You can obviously see a seam line right there. So I'm not thinking that this is, anything too important, but it is actually a pretty fun-looking Triceratops. Again, like a vintage-looking Triceratops, and I really quite like it, actually. I feel like with some nice paint application, this one could be a pretty fun figure, but it's not something that I'm too familiar with right now. Then we have one that is 1000% a bootleg for sure, which is a bootleg of the Papo Styracosaurus. Unfortunately, a bootleg, as that figure is a great Papo figure, but this one's definitely a bootleg. It's got the cheap, hollow kind of a feel to it, and it would be fun for a repaint, which is probably what I'll use it for. I actually found another one of these bootlegs at a local flea market, and I did pick up actually a couple of the bootlegs just for repainting, because with a figure this nice, I wouldn't want to repaint an original, so I'll take a bootleg to give a repaint to, and that is definitely what this one is. And then we have an actual Papo, not a bootleg. We have the Papo running green Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I was really surprised to see some original Papos in here, and with the tag still on them, which is even more shocking. I think I'll just keep the tag on this guy, because I see no reason to take it off. I've always been a big fan of this Rex from Papo, so I am happy to have another. I do believe I only have one of the green one. Of course, there is also the green, rainbow, and brown ones out there, so I do have all three different variants and, numerous bootlegs. But this one specifically, I do only have one of the green, so I'm quite happy to have a second. Then we've got a really cheap figure, very cheap, kind of a dollar store Stegosaurus. Not a very good figure by any means, kind of ugly for the most part. I mean, he's not terribly ugly. He has kind of a fun vintage look to him, so it's another one of those figures that, so cheap, but has a kind of a decent sculpt that I feel like with some legit paint application, it might look pretty fun. One of these days, I'm going to have to get a bunch of these really cheap dinos and repaint them just for a video. Now, here's one that's really, really puzzling to me. This, at first glance, looks to be the Invicta Brachiosaurus, and that definitely is what it looks like to me, but it's actually made of, like, a metal, and even on the underside, it does say that it is from the British Museum of Natural History, and it's a plesiosaurus, but I had no idea that they had created any kind of, like, metal versions of their dinosaurs. Maybe it's just something that I've never heard of, but this one definitely has like a metal type of a feel or something. Like, I don't know what it's made of. Maybe it's like an aluminum or something. I'm not sure, but it definitely is not the usual plesiosaurus material that we normally find our Invicta figures made of. So this is one I'm going to have to dive a little deeper to try to find out more information on. Then we've got this very interesting Tyrannosaurus, another really cheap kind of a dollar store style Tyrannosaurus who has his tongue sticking out, so he looks like he's trying to taunt somebody. But again, the sculpt and the detail isn't too bad on the figure. It's another one that, even though it's kind of ugly, for the most part, if it had a better paint job, it might not be the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not at the top of my list as far as giving a repaint to. Then there is this really fun, super old school style Spinosaurus, which definitely has a pretty decent sculpt on him overall and really looks, again, like that picture-perfect Spinosaurus, that old school Spinosaurus that I would have seen portrayed in books and stuff as a child. So I really kind of like this figure, even though he's, again, another one of those cheap figures, kind of feels like he's hollow. He has a pretty fun sculpt overall, so this one is definitely one that I would like to repaint at some point. The previous Rex was probably at the bottom of the list of repaints. This one's definitely nearing the top because it's really cool. Then we've got another bootleg. And he's also covered in fuzz. These guys are actually pretty dirty. I'm taking them straight out of the box. I only really saw them in the listing on eBay, and now that I have them here, I'm kind of unboxing them with you guys, which is kind of the point of this video. But this one's definitely a bootleg. You can see a bootleg of the Papo Ankylosaurus, and funny enough, the actual Papo Ankylosaurus is included as well. So we have a look at the bootleg in comparison to the original right here, and you can definitely see that there is a significant difference as far as the overall quality and paint application on the original in comparison to this awkward-looking bootleg, but both are included regardless. And then we've got ourselves a Schleich figure, as we have the Schleich Dino Gorgon. Has a little bit of damage to it, but for the most part, it's in pretty good shape. Definitely a fun figure of a species we have very few figures of. And I do, of course, already have the figure, but I was happy to get a second to add to my collection regardless. And here's a gigantic beast of a figure, and you can probably already tell what it is. This is the Invicta Brachiosaurus, and I do have probably 4 of these guys already, maybe even more, I'm not entirely sure, but I love the figure. I really, really love anything Invicta, so of course I will always take a second when it comes to anything Invicta, and certainly this beautiful Brachiosaurus. And then there's this kind of fun little Triceratops. I actually do have this figure as well. I don't really recall what it is. I think it was some kind of a Happy Meal figure or something at some point. I don't know exactly for what, but it is, kind of a fun Triceratops, and I guess I'll take another one. Then here's one that I felt like was pretty random overall to be included. We have a Nanmu bootleg of their Indominus Rex, and this one obviously sports quills down the course of the back. This bootleg is way lower in quality than the gorgeous Nanmu figure that we had prior. You can definitely see, as soon as I bring it up close to the camera, that the actual, quality of the figure doesn't even remotely compete with the original Nanmu. And speaking of bootlegs, we have even more of them, especially when it comes to Papo bootlegs. We have two knockoffs of the standing Papo Rex. One obviously larger and slightly resculpted to the right, and then the one on the left is almost an exact clone, but with a crummy paint job and no articulated jaw. Actually, neither of them have articulated jaws, but definitely not the best figures in the world for sure. And then we've got the Safari Ltd Velociraptor. I actually have always loved this figure. There's just something about it that I really like. I love the pose of the figure. The paint job looks really nice, and I've had one for many years, but mine always had some scuffs of paint on the face, so I've been wanting to get another one with a little bit of a better paint application, and this one definitely looks like it could be that guy. Then we've also got this really cheap looking kind of a Brachiosaurus, as well as another cheap sort of a Parasaurolophus, kind of weird looking Parasaurolophus dinosaur figure. And the bootlegs just continue as we have a super bright looking bootleg of the Papo Dimetrodon, as well as a bootleg of the Safari Ltd, actually Carnegie collection, Stegosaurus, as well as a bootleg, which is super random, of the smaller Schleich Baryonyx, which is just like the weirdest figure to want to bootleg. We also have another knockoff of a Safari Ltd Carnegie collection figure, as this is their older Parasaurolophus that has been bootlegged as well. And then there's also a bootleg Papo Velociraptor in here, and a bootleg Papo Dilophosaurus. So bootlegs for everyone in this box, apparently. And then we have a giant figure yet again, as we have a very old Safari Ltd Carnegie collection Brachiosaurus, which this is a figure that I've wanted for a very long time. This guy also has dust flying all over the place right now, as we can see it just floating around in the air, because again, these guys are really filthy coming straight out of the box. But this is a figure I wanted for a very long time, and then I recently purchased one, and since then, this is now my third of this figure. So one of these days, I'm going to repaint it. It's actually a really cool looking Brachiosaurus figure that I feel like is just kind of aching for a little bit of a more realistic paint job. We've also got another bootleg that kind of snuck past me, which is a bootleg of the Schleich Baryonyx, and this one has been upsized a little bit. It's definitely a little larger. I actually have another one of these that I had repainted quite a few years ago, giving it, a little bit more of a realistic paint job, but now I seem to have been given the figure yet again, thanks to this random box of dinos. And here's one that I thought was, again, really random. Like, some of these figures are super random included in here. This one is the Thunderbeast's Parasaurolophus. This is another figure that I do already have, but I have been kind of trying to acquire the Thunderbeasts line slowly, as there are quite a few of them, and they're pretty pricey at times because of how old they are, I believe from the 90s, but it is fun to have a second again of any Thunderbeast figure. We've also got the Safari Ltd Tyrannosaurus Rex, kind of a fun older Rex. There's also a Safari Ltd Dilophosaurus, which I really love this Dilophosaurus, and I'm happy to see that he's actually in pretty nice shape, as that one does tend to get nicked up quite a bit over time. And we've also got the Schleich, which is coming in awkwardly, the Schleich Triceratops, which is the newer Triceratops from Schleich. Boy, this Dilophosaurus is just getting tangled in here. The newer Triceratops from Schleich, and this is a figure I really, really love. Like, the Schleich line does produce some really nice figures from time to time, and this Triceratops is definitely one of their nicest. And then we have even more Invicta figures in here, which is really exciting. This one, the Mammoth, isn't in too good a shape. He's got some paint chips on him for sure, but for the most part, they look okay, I guess. Definitely fun to have, again, any Invicta figures. Unfortunately, the super rare ones, like the Lambeosaurus and stuff, are not included in this lot. I would love to stumble upon a second Lambeosaurus at some point just because of its rarity, but again, anytime I can get any Invicta figure, I'm definitely a happy camper. Then we have the Papo Pentaceratops, which doesn't want to stand right now because of that tag under him. So we've got another of the Pentaceratops. This is one that, again, I do have, but I love this figure. Like, absolutely love the Papo Pentaceratops. So I'm really psyched to have a second, and this one I'll keep with the tag on, as I did take the tag, I believe, off of my original when I had reviewed it, and probably lost the tag, but it's such a gorgeous figure. I really, really love the Papo line. So Papo figures are always a-okay with me, even when you get figures that look like this guy. Yes, the Papo Giganotosaurus is also included in here, and this one I thought was also quite random because it's such a new figure. Like, it was not released long ago, so it's strange that this one would already be showing up in random dino lots on eBay. But the fact that all of the Papos, I believe, that were in here, or except maybe the Ankylosaurus did not, but most of them all have the tags on them, which means that I guess they bought them and didn't really do much with them because they never even took the tags off of them. But I was happy to have a second of this figure again. He's not the best Giganotosaurus out there, but he is pretty fun, and the more I've had the other one, my original, the more I'm warming up to the figure. So I'm happy to have a second, especially because now I can kind of create like a battling scene with the two as they're both kind of rearing up in this position, obviously. So pretty fun addition, even if he's not the best figure in the world. And then, again, speaking of bootlegs, we have a bootleg of the Reborn Tyrannosaurus, which this bootleg is as well another figure that I actually have repainted at one point in time, but this one is not the best in the world as far as quality or paint application, but it is in here regardless. And then we have the Schleich Baryonyx, which is a figure that I really love as far as the sculpt, not so much as far as the paint job. So I've really wanted to pick one up for a while again to repaint to see how nice it could look with a bit of a more realistic paint job to it. So I was really happy to see this one included because now I can do that. The second to last is this massive beast, which is the biggest figure in the box. A very old school Parasaurolophus. I've actually been wanting to get a hold of some of these figures for a while. They're not, again, the best dinosaur figures in the world, but they always looked really cool to me, decently detailed. They have some fun paint application and kind of a fun vintage old look to them. I don't actually know the company that makes these, so I will have to look into that, but I am happy to have my first of this line of dinosaurs in my collection, which is the Parasaurolophus, something that I'm really happy to have. And again, they're huge figures, so that as well is quite the appealing aspect of them. And the final figure included in this, and it's pretty much the entire reason that I wanted the lot, is this one, which is also dirty, so I gotta take this stuff off of them. These guys are really, really dirty. I don't know whose figures these were before, but they did not take care of them very well. But this one is the Flintstones Hunting Party Stegosaurus, and in my opinion, it's one of the most beautiful looking vintage Stegosaurus figures that has ever existed, and I've wanted one for so long, and I'm really psyched to actually have one now. They're very, very rare, very hard to find. Unfortunately, you can see that there is a plate missing right there, and if we actually turn it around, there's a larger plate missing right here, but I don't mind it that much because, again, the figure is so super rare. I am just happy to finally have one in my collection, even if it is damaged a little bit, and I will just deal with that until I can someday score another one. But the fact that I finally have one of these figures just is so super awesome and makes buying this entire box worth it, even though it was filled with a lot of not so good figures and some really fun figures. This one is the icing on the cake as far as this box goes. So another fun box of dinosaurs now entering my collection. Make sure that you, as always, leave your comments down below letting me know if anything in here sparked your interest as far as a review goes, and make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.